Howdy Partners, and welcome to another episode of the Howdy Partners podcast, where we give you tactical insights so that you can be successful in your role executing on partnerships. Today, it's Tom and we're going to be diving into the first 8 months of being in partnerships as a partnerships manager, whether it's a new org, whether you're just starting, and we're going to talk about Tom's experience. But before we dive into that, Tom, how are you?
I'm doing okay. I feel like in 48 hours, I'm flying by the seat of my pants, but that's okay. When you have two kids, it creates a little bit more anxiety on top of it, but I'm doing good and excited to talk about this topic. I think we can get kind of raw about it, but we'll see.
Yeah, I'm gonna grill you. That's for sure. I'm gonna make sure that we really dig into what you've done, why you've done it, the impacts of it, and some of the challenges as well.
I started at SaaS Labs about 8 months ago. I think it was November, maybe it was 9 months. I can't remember. But I was essentially their first kind of like channel partner hire. Now Kyle, my manager, was brought in before that. And just to know, like, we have very similar backgrounds. I love Kyle, and he's been on the podcast before. So if you haven't listened to that episode, highly recommend going back. But we both come from, like channel partner backgrounds. We both worked at HubSpot agencies. So I think just knowing that I was coming into this role, into this company, I felt pretty excited and motivated just because I had someone that kind of shared the same experiences, background, heartaches, successes. So that was fun. And I guess in joining, we had a lot of wood to chop. We had an existing affiliate network. We didn't have like a true solutions program where we were actively managing a lot of these agency relationships. So on multiple accounts, I think we had a lot of work to do in the first few months. Just kind of noting some of the early milestones. We both built the program alongside a couple other people on our team, really from scratch, from like ideation to conception to launching. And as I look back, it's a lot of fun to think about kind of like what we did. Now, what I'll also tell you is like there was a lot of personal and onboarding goals too. Like just working in SaaS previously, I had a unique experience where like the SaaS company I worked for before in partnerships, I knew that product coming in day one, inside and out. So learning the product, adapting to like how this works with partners and just understanding how that platform worked in general was a lot easier than coming into this where I'm trying to balance learning and educating myself on product, processes, teams, while also thinking about how that will influence the program that we're about to build. So I would say that it wasn't necessarily like a big challenge, but it did kind of help me pinpoint where I spent my time. So like I said, it took us a couple months to get everything down. I just to kind of touch on the areas that we focused on in the ideation stage was, one, what are the other complementary technologies that our technology works really well with? That really helps you kind of develop the framework for the ideal partner profile, which we once again had an episode on. And I think it gave us a good glimpse in terms of, one, who's in our existing network that we should talk to, right? In our existing affiliate base. So, we were able to kind of go back through our affiliates, figure out, do we have partners that fit the IPP that we built? Are they in these ecosystems that we are making a strategic bet will be the right ecosystems for us to play in? And so we started to ideate on that. And then we put that into the contextual side of, okay, what does this program look like? Who are we trying to attract? What are the benefits of the program? What are the inclusions? What aren't we going to do? And I used previous experience to kind of build that with the future in mind. And I say that in the terms of think about what you want this program to look like in 1 year, in 2 years, in 3 years, instead of, okay, let's build something really grand, really complex, and then figure out 6 months later that it's not tiering isn't going to work now. So you got to kind of break down the house. So I would just say in the mindset of let's think about the architecture, the blueprint in a smart manner. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. We built the inclusions, the processes, like how this is going to flow through our systems, et cetera. And it took a few months. We really launched in February, March. So it took some time.
Nice. So let's summarize some of that into like, what were the phases that you worked through? It sounds like there was some initial discovery, there was some building, there was the launching, there was the managing, but like, how would you summarize, let's say, the first 2 to 3 months? How would you maybe categorize that into, phase 1, and then what did phase 2 look like? Go through those different milestones.
Yeah, good point. Way to keep me back on track since I probably lost all of our audience. Month 1 and 2 was really like the onboarding. So like once again, it's important to say that I spent a lot of this time learning myself, as everyone should, whether you have a company that has a pretty robust onboarding plan or not. But at the same time, through that onboarding and knowledge, I would call month 1 to like the ideation phase, because you're learning about the product, how that might influence your experiences and your partnerships. You're learning about the teams and the processes and how how those influence processes. So that was really, for me, like I would say at the end of month 2, my goal was to have conversations around what I think works really well with our product in the current partnerships that we have, and what isn't working really well. I think that's a really good time, whether you have a full team around you or you're just one, to talk about what you see as a good fit and what needs to be changed. And so from those conversations, it then kind of spurned into, okay, we've got some ideas, we've got some concepts. Now let's build it and stress test it. So month 3 through, say, 4 or 5 was let's build it. Let's put the IPP in writing. Let's put our program benefits, what we want these partners to see, what we want them to achieve, what they get, in writing. And so with that, we're doing a lot of building. We're getting new site pages up and running. We're building a lot of collateral. This was an important time for me. And I guess just to kind of dive into the cam roll here, my goal is to help activate our channel partners from everything in enablement. So understanding and being experts in the Just Call product, to helping them position. So consulting around service development, going to market, how they can position the product with HubSpot, how they can position it with Pipedrive, to hopefully lead to successful partnerships. So in thinking about that, I did a lot of building in month 3 through 5 of kickoff decks, product enablement training. Like, this is where all the training that I went through on understanding this product in month 1 through 2 is now, okay, how do I translate that to my partners? How do I build a plan for them to get enabled? And then just building out a lot of the positioning pieces. So that was conception and build. And then fast forward to like March, April, May, we were ready to launch. We brought on a channel BDR to acquire partners. We figured out the environments that we want to play well in, and we turned it on. And month 5 through 8 has been do it and also learn. And I think this is a really important piece to call out, is that in a role where you're launching a partnership, like, I think the month 6 through 12 is a really critical time for you to make executive decisions on, is this working, yes or no? And just looking at everything in like a microcosm. Processes. Are we working really well with sales? Have we enabled CX? Have we built automations and efficiencies with our internal technologies? And then how is the activation plan working with our partners? And I'm happy to say that it's working. Like, it puts a lot of proof in the pudding for what we build. We're seeing some good success, but we also see things that we want to change.
Cool. And so what I'm curious about is like, I imagine a lot of partner managers get really eager to build something or do something. And I imagine you experienced some of that as well. And so what are some of the things that you wanted to do earlier, but knew based on previous experiences that you needed to push that out further? whether it's, in the building phase or what have you? What were some of those things where you're like, it would be great to have this, but we need to, learn more before we do that? What were some of those things that you kind of punted into the future?
Yeah, I think it kind of falls into three categories here. One is internal technology. So I wanted a more robust PRM because I just did. Like I've seen it in action before. Like when you think about the PRM or what you want your partners to access, I want a central hub for our partners to get education materials, go through certifications and trainings, register leads, get paid out. So I wanted a full kind of enclosed system. And we have a PRM in place already. So I think I kind of gave up like the reins on having something a little bit more robust early on. But say the internal tech side is you got to build over time. So thinking about what do we need, what do we currently have, and what does like a phased rollout plan look like. The other piece was building some of the future state partnership aspects like tiering, et cetera. Now this one's interesting because, like I said, when we were going in the ideation and conception phase, I'm looking years out, like sometimes 1 or 2 years out, because if you can build the blueprint, then, with hopefully reducing a lot of the potential to like massively change, you're doing yourself a service. So early on, I really wanted to launch like tiering and really be bullish about like who we're bringing in, have a scorecard around it. And we do, like, I would say the cool thing here is we have pieces of that. So we're getting ready, and we'll talk about what's happening in the next months already, but I just wanted the whole thing ready up front, and it just took time. So we kind of pushed that off. And then I'd say the other piece has been like internal enablement. I wanted to develop a really good cadence with the teams that were important to us. So marketing, sales, CX, support early on. And once again, I think what I've learned is that you're doing it in baby steps or bite-sized pieces. You can't just like throw the whole kitchen sink at them at once. And what I would say is that's also been a challenge too, is like we're really rolling this out in phases. And now to me is like the time to make sure that we have our processes, we have good relationships with these teams, because look out, like here come the channel partners. But it just, once again, I feel like I had a different vision in mind of like, oh, my sales team would be like a well-oiled machine with channel partnerships right now. And it's not entirely untrue. It's just like, it's taking a little bit longer to get there, which is okay.
Yeah. And I think that's a really important point because, there's a lot of information out there for, we've even had episodes around building those internal relationships and, starting early, but it's not always clear how much you should really invest in that. And so what I'm pulling from that is like, at least on the internal relationship side of things, is like still have those conversations, but maybe not a weekly cadence or a bi-weekly cadence, but every once in a while you're having a conversation so that you are building that internal champion.
Yep.
And then being able to tap on them when you need them versus constantly doing work with them where you may not have an update. So
the same goes for how you approach partnerships, is like you want to spend the first bit of time establishing trust, establishing rapport, and having like really just open conversations and asking questions. And I did that, but the microcosm there is you got to be patient, like, and over time, like especially in that ideation or conception phase, you should be having really important conversations with sales, CX, but it's more of like, can I get your buy-in, or can I get your help on like shaping this process so that you have influence? It fits into what your sales model is, or like the sales training aspect, and how can I help get us there? And then, at month 6 through 8, it's like, all right, we're turning this on, like, let's figure this out and see what we need to change.
Awesome. And so what impacts have you been seeing now that the program's underway? Has there been any like initial momentum? If so, what does that look like?
Yeah, for sure. And it will kind of frame this around, partnerships can take a long time to see the success, like, or see like the fruits of the labor, whether it's integrations, whether it's channel, affiliate, it doesn't matter. You've got to put in the effort and the groundwork to get us there. But I think one of the bigger milestones and achievements that we've had is like by spending the time, and this is less like measurable, it's more like you'll see it in your everyday work, but by spending that much time in ideating, like breaking it down, like asking really hard questions and then conceptualizing, it's working. Like I don't see any gaps in kind of like that, the foundational pieces of like launching partnerships and what that looks like. And that's been really invigorating because what we put together is working. And now to translate that into some actual like hard numbers, I was looking at, I mean, we started bringing on new partners in May. So May, June, July, we're almost 3 months in. Of our new partners, 40% of them have already brought at least one customer, which
Nice.
I'm just like, I don't know, I can't remember the benchmarks, but that seems pretty good. But more importantly, like over 70% of them have brought us at least one qualified lead. So what that tells me is that I'm focusing on the right things in establishing trust. And then keep in mind, like a lot of this isn't my control. Like a lot of partners, as we know, come to us because they have a customer already or they've got a customer in mind. But that translates into like a lot of these partners that brought multiple customers. And so really focusing on simplifying, like this is one call out that I would make to the audience is like, if you're in a role where you have your partnership manager, like, or you're enabling, simplify your objectives, because what you don't want to have happen is your initiatives and your partnerships are focusing on like 5 or 6 key different things at once. You're not going to get more than skin deep. Rather, focus on establishing trust. And our very own Ben Wright had an awesome LinkedIn post on this week. It's like, how do you come into a relationship and judge like if they're giving a lot or you're giving a lot? It's like the emotional bank account. And how do you say no? And so once again, it really leads to like the importance of building and establishing trust, focusing on a couple of initiatives. My initiatives are, let me understand your business. Let me help you understand how we can work really well together. Let me make you a product expert, and let's start developing hypotheses around how you can position the product. And that's it. I don't even talk about co-marketing. I don't talk about like anything else. That's it.
Yeah, and that's driving action first, which is what you need in any partner program. You need that initial momentum. And so overwhelming partners, I think a lot of people try to do so much at once, and that just immediately clutters the partnership in the partner's mind, where they're like, well, how can I do all of this? Or, what's the value of this? Or, they're focused on their own business objectives and it might not align. And so if you're choosing one thing, I think that's the really important piece there. And that's what I've been trying to do as well, where it's like, you can do a lot of things and a lot of things are probably a good idea. And a lot of things will probably produce results as well. But if you're spreading yourself too thin and your partner too thin and kind of like convoluting the actual partnership itself versus being exceptionally focused on, like we talked about on the last episode, the specific list of accounts or the specific program and who you're marketing to specifically, and having that focus, that I think is exceptionally critical.
The one thing I want to state in like the first 8 months here that has also made a big impact is being very honest and transparent. Like, especially if you're building, like ideating, conceptualizing, launching, and then working, you have to have a very open line of communication with the people that matter. Because if something's not working, now is the time to mention it. So like you talk about the burnout or like focusing on activities that are ultimately towards revenue or hitting your goals. Half of that relies on you building efficiencies and making sure that you're calling out efficiencies in or gaps in the game to make that change right away. Because if you just kind of sit back and like, things will change on their own, someone else will figure out a better process or like build this enablement piece so I'm not doing it live for an hour every time. It's not going to happen. You've got to be the one to kind of stand up and be like, you know what? I bet I could make this more efficient. And so the way I really like to think about this is like, you've got capacity, right? So like my role, my capacity is built around how many partners can I carry effectively and make sure that I'm efficient in scaling those partnerships. And there's a lot that goes into that. But then the other side, so like that barometer is going to continue to go up as new partners come in. the way to kind of like level that out without necessarily adding headcount is what technologies do we have? What processes have we built? What efficiencies, like what assets, materials can we really unlock and unleash for our partners to kind of measure that out? And that's a really good, like month 6, month 8, like I'm in the middle of that right now. You gotta consider that.
Love it. So what are you working on next? What do the next 8 months look like? You've done the first 8 to 9 months. What do the next 8 months look like in your mind for, phase 4 or 5?
Yeah, I think there's 2 or 3 initiatives that I'm looking to put into play, which kind of hits on one, scaling our partnerships and what's available for our partners. But so in that vein, we're starting to talk about, partner awards, or like how do we recognize our top partners? So we just launched a newsletter, which is really cool. Like we're absolutely trying to make sure that we have a presence in communication chain with our partners, which took some time to get there. And I think we'll still take time to make sure that we have the right elements and right pieces in place. We're launching a partner resource hub to make sure that they can access materials, assets readily instead of needing to ask or knock on our door every time. So a lot of it is making sure that we have value or putting like valuable material and opportunities to our partners. So month 9 through 12, and then probably early next year is going to be a big focus to make sure that we're keeping it fresh, as the cool kids are calling it. And then the other piece, now that we have some data, we're starting to see partnerships come through the door, is actually launching our tiering mechanism. And this speaks directly to my capacity, my efficiencies, but not every partner that comes on board is necessarily going to, be a good fit for the program. And I'm actually want to call this out. I'm really proud of my team, especially our acquisition team, for putting those kind of pieces in place early on. We're not necessarily like letting everyone into the program, or like we're making sure that they're a right fit for either the affiliate or solution, and it's providing a lot of value. But the next phase is like, okay, well, now that we've had some partners in place and we've activated them, what are they doing? And so the tiering model is a beast. And we have an episode on it previously, so go back and listen to that. But this is the time to really start kind of like lightly roll it out, where it's like, okay, top partners, now what can we offer them? Like incentives, enablement materials in front of our team, et cetera. So really looking forward to that. And then we are hoping to work on some of our affiliate and just getting a better presence there. We have an established program. Their affiliate partners are doing well. So I think it's time that we get Patty into the mix, and I'm going to introduce him to Kyle and hopefully talk about how we unlock them a little bit more.
There you go. I love it. So let's wrap up with one daily practice that you think a partner manager or a channel manager would do to be successful in the first 8 months. What is that one daily practice? Is it learning? Is it talking to the internal teams? Is it, reading about what the partners are consuming or where they're hanging out? What is that one daily practice that you think a partner manager should do?
Oh, that's a good one. I think in the first few months, it's definitely like listening and developing hypotheses. And I think developing hypotheses was really important for me, because then I could, once again, I think the open dialogue and just being very open and transparent with leadership and your team is critical, because I could talk about those hypotheses with our team and really start to hone in on like, okay, how are we going to build this? Like what matters to our partners? Yes, it was a lot of like conversing with existing partners that kind of fit that mold. But from a daily practice standpoint, it's like always be like ideating, always be creating that next vision, because if you don't, you're going to stall. Like, I think it's critical early on to establish that, like, guys, team, we are in a mode right now where bring your ideas. There's no wrong ideas, no wrong question. And what that will lead to is a very well-oiled team as you get to month 3 and you guys are ready to launch. Like, all right, now is the time. So let's continue to talk. Let's continue to ideate. Let's and on that note is like being confident and strong in your strategy, opinions. Like everyone has an opinion on how things work. So like really use that to your advantage. And I don't know, once you get to like month 6 and you're like, hey, I got this. Like I know the product, I know our partners, I know this works well, is don't kind of sit back and let things just unfold. Like go out there and tackle some of those like hairy, dirty initiatives, like enabling internal teams. Like if we don't get that done, it's not going to work. And so it's just continually being able to like ask those and put those pieces in place.
No, yeah, that's, I knew it was going to be a challenge. And my tack on to that would be like, keep a swipe file as well of these hypotheses. And so what I have in my calendar is like a daily reflection where I'm going to create, 3 points, and maybe I structure it so that it's kind of like, if you have a gratitude journal, you're going to write 3 things down that you're grateful for. Do the same for your job, where it's like, what are 3 things that I learned, or what's an interesting piece of information that I need to be aware of, or, write a sentence or 2 about your hypothesis, and keep that as a swipe file, because then when you look back at it, you won't lose track of the things that have happened and the ideas that you've had. And then you'll see, oh, well, we actually tried to implement this thing, but it didn't work, or I talked about this idea and it wasn't, well received on the partner side or the internal team. And so keeping that swipe file and like those, personal notes of what you're thinking about and what you're wanting to try is good, because, everyone's jumping from Zoom to Zoom every single hour. And so you're going to lose track of information that you hear, 3 days ago. And so best to write it down, have a swipe file, and keep it simple.
Yeah, I think one of the best analogies that I could put into like layman's terms here is be an investigator that's working on a murder trial or like a murder investigation. Ask questions, develop hypotheses, never stop talking to people that you need to talk to, and save evidence. Like and by save evidence, it's like you're going to get inundated in the first few months with like other teams that are already here and working. But as you start to think about like, what do I need for myself and for my partners to be successful? I need a lot of material. I need a lot of guidance. I need a lot of expertise. I need other teams to help out. Keep tabs on that. Like right now, what I'm doing is like every asset that I see coming from marketing or coming from engineering or CX, I'm like, like, would that piece be great for our partners? Can I partnerify it? And the other thing I would say is be scrappy. Like you might not have a lot of experience in like writing content or like designing files. You don't need to be designing files. Like just create something that your partners will need. And whether it's a Google Doc or like a branded Figma file that your marketing team's already on top of, like just do it.
There we go. Thank you everyone for another episode of the Howdy Partners podcast, and we will see you next time.